The Greater Pilgrimage, Hajj Akbar, written by Munshi Premchand. The story revolves around Abbasi, a woman preparing for her Hajj pilgrimage. As she sits on a train amidst bustling pilgrims at the Delhi station, her thoughts drift to her grandson Nasir, whom she left behind. Despite the spiritual journey ahead, Abbasi is deeply concerned for Nasir, especially after learning from Sabir Hussain, a family acquaintance, that the boy has fallen ill and longs for her. Abbasi feels guilty for leaving Nasir in the care of his mother, Shakira, who has a strained relationship with her. Realizing her love for her grandson, she decides to abandon her pilgrimage and rush back to him. Upon arriving at Sabir's home, where Nasir is staying, Abbasi is relieved to see the boy alive but weak. Nasir, overjoyed at her return, immediately shows signs of recovery. His face, once pale and sickly, brightens with joy upon seeing her, and within a week, he begins to regain his health. The story concludes with a tender moment between Nasir and Sabir, where Sabir jokes about sending Abbasi away, but Nasir refuses, indicating his deep attachment to her. Abbasi, though she missed the pilgrimage, finds comfort in the fact that taking care of Nasir is a greater act of devotion, with Sabir even referring to it as a greater pilgrimage, Hajj Akbar. Let's listen to the world-famous story written by Munshi Premchand. Munshi Sabir Hussain had a limited income but high expenses. He couldn't afford to keep a nanny for his child, but concerns about the child's health and the embarrassment of living below the standards of his peers forced him to bear this expense. The child loved the nanny dearly and was always attached to her, which made her seem even more indispensable. However, perhaps the biggest reason was that out of courtesy, Sabir could not muster the courage to dismiss her. The old woman had been working for them for 3 years and had raised their only child. She did her job wholeheartedly, and there was no apparent reason to let her go. Besides, Sabir, being a gentle and mild-mannered person, found it impossible to dismiss her without reason. However, his wife Shakira didn't agree with him in this matter. She suspected that the nanny was stealing from them. When the nanny returned from the market, Shakira would hide behind the door to observe if she was stashing away flour or firewood. She would examine the items the nanny brought for hours, complain, and repeatedly ask why there was so little and whether prices had become so high. Sometimes, the nanny would calmly respond to Shakira's suspicions, but when Shakira became more aggressive, the nanny would also become firm. She would swear and provide evidence of her honesty. Arguments and discussions would go on for hours, and nearly every day this scene would end with the nanny shedding a few quiet tears. Despite enduring all these hardships, the nanny continued to stay, which further deepened Shakira's doubts. She could never believe that the old woman was staying purely out of love for the child, as she didn't think the nanny was capable of such noble feelings. One day, by coincidence, the nanny was slightly late returning from the market. There, she had become engrossed in a heated argument between two vegetable vendors. Their passionate debate, their gestures, their witty remarks, and their colorful language were all fascinating. It was a pure mental duel, a competition to showcase their rhetorical skills. The crowd watching found it entertaining. The nanny, too, stood there, captivated by the drama, completely unaware of the passing time. Suddenly, hearing the clock strike 9, she snapped out of it and hurried home. Shakira was already irritated. As soon as the nanny entered, she coldly asked, "Were you lost in the market?" The nanny, with a guilty expression, replied, "Mistress, I ran into a familiar nanny and started chatting." Shakira, even more annoyed by the response, retorted, "I'm running late for work, and you are out for a stroll." This time, the nanny chose to remain quiet, thinking it was wiser to avoid confrontation. She tried to pick up the child, but Shakira harshly snapped, "Leave him. He's not desperate without you." The nanny ignored this command, thinking that holding the child might help soothe Shakira's anger. She motioned for Nasir, the child, to come to her, and he toddled towards her with open arms. The nanny lifted him up, but Shakira quickly swooped in like a hawk, snatching Nasir from her arms and saying, "I've seen your tricks for far too long. Show these stunts to someone else, I'm fed up." The nanny adored Nasir and believed that Shakira was well aware of this bond. In her mind, she thought their connection was too strong to be severed by a few harsh words. But Shakira's coldness and the way she snatched Nasir made it clear that the situation had changed. Unable to contain her emotions, the nanny said, "Mistress, I haven't committed such a big mistake. At most, I was half an hour late. Why are you so furious? If you really want me to leave, just say it clearly. God will provide for me elsewhere." Shakira responded sharply, "Who cares about you here? Nannies like you are a dime a dozen, wandering the streets aimlessly." The nanny, holding back tears, replied, "May God keep you well. You'll find many nannies and caregivers. Whatever mistake I made, please forgive me. I leave now." Shakira shot back, "Go to the main quarters and settle your wages." The nanny, choking on her emotions, said, "Please make sure Nasir gets his sweets as promised." Just then, Sabir Hussain arrived home and asked, "What's going on?" The nanny, holding back her tears, said, "Nothing, sir. Mistress has let me go. I'm leaving." Sabir Hussain disliked domestic disputes and avoided them as much as possible. He responded with a frown, "What happened?" Shakira coolly replied, "Nothing. It's just my mood. I don't feel like keeping her anymore. We aren't bound to anyone." Sabir sighed and said, "You always seem to stir up some trouble." Shakira snapped back, "Yes, I have this obsession. What can I do? It's my nature. If you are so fond of her, take her and tie her around your neck. I don't need her in my house." As the nanny left the house, her eyes were filled with tears. Her heart ached for Nasir, wishing she could hold him one last time, but she had to leave with this unfulfilled desire. Nasir followed the nanny to the door. But when the nanny closed the door from the outside, he threw himself on the ground and began to cry, calling out, "Anna, Anna." Shakira tried to soothe him, caressing and comforting him, attempting to take him in her arms. She offered him sweets, promised to take him to the fair, and even threatened him with the monkey, the soldier, the lolo, and the wind. But nothing worked on Nasir. Shakira eventually grew angry, left the boy there, and went back to her household chores. Nasir's face and cheeks turned red, and his eyes swelled up. Finally, he sobbed himself to sleep on the ground. Shakira thought that after a little crying, the child would calm down. But as soon as Nasir woke up, he again started demanding, "Anna." At 3 o'clock, Sabir Hussain returned from work, and seeing the child in this state, cast an angry look at his wife, picked up Nasir, and began to soothe him. Only when Nasir became convinced that Anna had gone to buy sweets did he feel a little comforted. However, as evening came, he again started crying, "Did Anna bring sweets?" This went on for 2 or 3 days. Nasir had nothing else to do except cry for Anna. That harmless dog, who would not leave his lap for a moment, the mute cat whose presence on the shelf filled him with joy, and the carefree bird he adored, all became meaningless in his eyes. He didn't even glance at them. None of these lifeless, speechless things could replace someone like Anna, who was alive, loving, carried him in her arms, lulled him to sleep, and sang sweet songs to make him happy. Often, he would wake up suddenly and cry out for Anna. Sometimes, he would go to the door and call out, gesturing with his hands as if to beckon her. He would sit for hours in Anna's empty room, expecting her to come. Finding the door to the room closed, he would knock, thinking she might be hiding inside. Whenever he heard the main door open, he would run, shouting, "Anna! Anna!" hoping she had returned. His once plump body began to wither away. His rosy cheeks dried up. Both his mother and father longed for his charming laughter. Even if he laughed after much coaxing, it seemed half-hearted, as if he were merely pretending to laugh to please them. Now, neither milk nor sweets, nuts, biscuits, or fresh treats interested him. Those things only had value when Anna fed him with her hands. Without her, nothing seemed enjoyable. The once vibrant, blooming 2-year-old child had withered like a dried-up plant. The boy, whose body used to feel warm and soft when lifted, now resembled a mere skeleton. Shakira, watching her child's deteriorating state, silently regretted her foolishness. Sabir Hussain, naturally a quiet man, now never let Nasir leave his arms. He took him out for fresh air every day and bought him new toys, but the wilting plant showed no sign of revival. The nanny had been the sun in his world. Without her warmth and light, how could the flower bloom again? Without her, everything seemed dark and empty. They had hired a new nanny on the third day, but Nasir would hide his face the moment he saw her, as if she were a monster or a ghost. Not seeing the nanny in the real world, Nasir now spent most of his time in his imaginary world. There, his beloved Anna still lived. She walked and moved around. She had the same lap, the same love, the same sweet words, and the same delightful songs. The same tasty sweets. The same beautiful world, filled with enchanting days and nights. Sitting alone, he would talk to Anna. Anna, the dog is barking. Anna, the cow is giving milk. Anna, the white horse is running. Every morning, he would take a water pot and go to the nanny's room, saying, Anna, drink water. He would take a glass of milk and leave it in her room, saying, Anna, give me milk. He would cover a pillow with a blanket on his bed and say, Anna is sleeping. When Shakira sat down to eat, Nasir would pick up the dishes and take them to the nanny's room, saying, Anna will eat this. To him, Anna was now a heavenly figure whose return was impossible. She was merely a beautiful memory of past happiness. Her memory was everything to him. Slowly, the playful innocence and restlessness in Nasir's behavior were replaced by a resigned hopefulness, a sad sort of happiness. 3 weeks passed this way. It was the rainy season, with sweltering heat one moment and cool breezes the next. Fever and colds were rampant. Nasir's frail body could not withstand these seasonal changes. Shakira, out of caution, made sure he wore a flannel shirt, kept him away from water, and didn't let him walk barefoot. But the dampness took its toll, and Nasir developed a cough. It was early morning. Nasir lay on the bed with his eyes closed. The doctor's treatments had failed. Shakira sat beside him, massaging his chest with oil, while Sabir Hussain stood by with a sorrowful expression, looking at the child with eyes full of grief. He had hardly spoken to Shakira these days. He felt a kind of hatred towards her. In his eyes, she was a heartless, careless woman responsible for Nasir's illness. Shakira nervously said, "Why don't we call the senior physician today? Maybe his medicine will work." Sabir Hussain, looking at the dark clouds, replied bitterly, "Not even the senior physician or Luqman himself could help him now." Shakira, "So, there's no cure left?" Sabir, "There is only one cure, but it's impossible to find." Shakira, "You are obsessed with that idea. Do you really think Abbasi will cure him?" Sabir, "Yes, for you, she may be poison, but for the child, she would be nectar." Shakira, "I don't believe that Allah has given her that much power." Sabir, "If you don't believe it now, you will regret it later. You'll lose the child." Shakira, "Be quiet. Stop speaking such ill omens. If you're going to talk like this, just leave." Sabir, "Fine, I'll go. But remember, this blood will be on your hands. If you want to see your son healthy again, go to Abbasi. Beg her, plead with her. Your child's life depends on her mercy." Shakira said nothing, her eyes filled with tears. Sabir Hussain asked, "So, what's your decision? Should I go and find her?" Shakira, "Why would you go? I'll go myself." Sabir, "No, forgive me, but I don't trust you. Who knows what you'll say to her, and if she was coming, she might change her mind." Shakira cast a reproachful glance at her husband and said, "Yes, what else? I'm not worried about my child's illness. I was too ashamed to tell you, but this thought has been coming to me again and again. If I knew the address of the nurse's house, I would have already gone to her. She may be angry with me, but she loved Nasir. I will go to her today. I will wet her feet with my tears, and I will appease her however I can." Shakira spoke these words with great restraint, but the tears she had held back could no longer be stopped. Sabir Hussain looked at his wife with sympathy and, feeling remorseful, said, "I don't think it's appropriate for you to go. I will go myself." Abbasi was all alone in the world. Once upon a time, her family had flourished like a lush green tree, but gradually, the autumn of life had caused all its leaves to fall. The storms of fate had trampled the tree, and now only this dry branch remained, a reminder of what was once a thriving tree. But when she had Nasir, it was as if life returned to her dry branch. Green leaves began to sprout. The life that had once been barren and broken now showed signs of color and fragrance. It was like a traveler lost in a dark wilderness had caught a glimpse of a guiding light. Her stream of life no longer crashed against rocks, it now watered a blooming garden. Her life was no longer meaningless, it had found purpose. Abbasi was devoted to Nasir's innocent chatter. But she kept her love for him hidden from Shakira, so that no jealousy would arise in the mother's heart. She secretly brought sweets for Nasir and felt joy when he ate them. She would apply herbal paste on him 2 or 3 times a day to help him grow strong. She never fed him in front of others, fearing he might catch the evil eye. She constantly lamented his poor health in front of others, and she would bring talismans and charms to protect him from harm. This was her pure motherly love, free of any selfish desire, motivated only by her deep spiritual connection with the child. After leaving that house, Abbasi's state was like that of a theatre when the lights suddenly go out. The image of Nasir danced before her eyes, and his sweet words echoed in her ears. Her home felt like it was devouring her. That dark and suffocating room became unbearable. The night dragged on. In the morning, while she was sweeping the house, she suddenly heard the call of a vendor selling fresh halwa. Without thinking, she rushed outside. Memories flooded her mind. Who would eat the halwa today? Who would sit in her lap and chirp happily? The melody of joy that used to pour from Nasir's eyes, lips, and every part of his little body when he ate halwa, Abbasi's soul was tormented by these memories. In her restlessness, she left the house, intending to see Nasir. But halfway there, she turned back. Nasir never left Abbasi's thoughts, not even for a moment. She would wake up with a start, imagining Nasir coming towards her on his toy horse. Whenever she went to visit neighbors, she would talk about Nasir. If someone came to her house, Nasir would be the topic of conversation. Nasir had taken over her heart and soul, leaving no room for the bitterness of Shakira's indifference or harshness. Every day, Abbasi would resolve to go see Nasir. She would buy toys and sweets from the market for him. She would leave the house, but sometimes she would turn back halfway. Sometimes she couldn't take more than a few steps forward. What face would she show? How could she face someone who considered love to be a deception? How could she face him? Sometimes she feared that Nasir might not recognize her anymore. Could she trust in the love of a child? What if he had grown fond of the new nurse? These thoughts acted as chains around her feet. 2 weeks passed in this way. Abbasi's heart felt restless, as if she were preparing for a long journey. Everything in the house was left as it was. She had no interest in food or clothes. Even her basic physical needs were neglected, as her heart seemed consumed by an emptiness she could not fill. Abbasi was like a pet bird that had been released from its cage, now searching for a new corner to call home. This gave her a reason to forget herself, and she prepared for a journey. The sky was covered with dark clouds, and a light drizzle was falling. At the Delhi station, there was a huge crowd of pilgrims. Some were already seated in the trains, while others were bidding farewell to their families. It was a scene of chaos all around. Even at this time, the world clung to those who were leaving. Some were instructing their wives, once the rice is harvested, plant peas in the field near the pond and wheat near the orchard. Someone was advising his young son, don't delay in filing the lawsuit for the overdue rent from the tenants, and make sure to charge 2 rupees interest per 100. An old merchant was instructing his accountant, if the goods are delayed, go yourself and take quick-selling items, or else the money will be stuck. However, there were also a few people whose religious devotion was apparent. They were either quietly gazing at the sky or engrossed in reciting prayers. Abbasi sat in a train, thinking, these good people still can't leave behind their worldly worries, talking about trade and transactions. If Nasir were here right now, he would cry a lot. He wouldn't leave my lap. I'll definitely go to see him when I return. Oh Allah, please let the train start. It's so hot, my heart is burning. The clouds are so thick, but it's not raining. I don't know why these railway people are delaying. They are running around meaninglessly instead of just starting the train so that the passengers can have some relief. Suddenly, she saw Sabir Hussain coming onto the platform with a bicycle. His face was pale and his clothes were wet. He began peeking into the compartments. Abbasi, just to show that she was also going for Hajj, stepped out of the train. Sabir Hussain rushed over to her and said, "So Abbasi, you are going for Hajj too?" With proud humility, Abbasi replied, "Yes, what else should I do here? Life is uncertain, who knows when I might close my eyes. One must have something to show before God. Is Nasir doing well?" "Sabir, now that you are leaving, what good will it do to ask about Nasir? Just keep praying for him." Abbasi's heart skipped a beat, and she anxiously asked, "What do you mean? Isn't he feeling well?" "Sabir, he's been unwell ever since you left. For about 2 weeks, he kept crying, 'Anna, Anna.' And for the past week, he's been suffering from a cough and fever. I've tried every medicine, but nothing works. I was thinking of coming to beg you to come back, hoping that seeing you might improve his condition. But when I came to your house, I found out that you were going for Hajj. How could I ask you to return after how you were treated? And besides, I didn't want to disrupt your good deed. Go ahead, may God protect him. If he has life left, he will recover, otherwise, what can we do against God's will?" Abbasi's vision darkened, and everything around her seemed to blur. Her heart filled with an indescribable fear. She prayed silently, "Oh Allah, I would give my life, just don't let anything happen to my Nasir." Her throat tightened with emotion. "How heartless am I? My dear child has been crying his heart out, and I didn't even go to see him. Shakira may be ill-tempered and rude, but what harm did Nasir ever do to me? I took my anger at his mother out on him. Oh God, forgive my sins. My sweet Nasir is longing for me." This thought tore at her heart, and tears began to flow from her eyes. If only I had known he loved me so much, I wouldn't have left the house, no matter what Shakira did. Oh, what must my poor boy be going through? In a panic, she asked, "Is he still drinking milk?" "Sabir, you're asking about milk? He hasn't even opened his eyes in 2 days. Abbasi, oh my God. Hey, porter. Porter. Son, please get my luggage off the train. I don't care about Hajj anymore. Hurry, son. Sir, please arrange a carriage quickly." The carriage left. There were several horse-drawn carriages standing on the road ahead. The horse moved slowly, and Abbasi grew increasingly anxious, constantly urging the driver, "Son, hurry up. I'll pay you extra." Seeing the crowd of passengers on the way made her even more frustrated. She wished the horse could sprout wings and fly. But as they neared Sabir Hussein's house, Abbasi's heart began to pound wildly. Again and again, she prayed, "Oh God, please let everything be all right." The carriage entered Sabir Hussein's street. Suddenly, Abbasi heard the sound of weeping. Her heart leaped into her throat, and she felt faint. It was as if she were drowning in a river. She wanted to jump out of the carriage but soon realized that the crying was from a woman bidding farewell to her family, which reassured her. Finally, they arrived at Sabir Hussein's house. Abbasi nervously glanced toward the door, like a runaway often returning home in the evening, hungry and thirsty, fearing someone might be sitting at the door. There was silence at the entrance, and the cook was sitting there, smoking a hookah. Abbasi felt slightly relieved. As she entered the house, she saw a new nurse preparing a poultice, and her heart steadied. She went to Shakira's room, trembling like the midday heat of summer. Shakira was sitting with Nasir in her lap, staring blankly at the door, the living image of sorrow and despair. Abbasi didn't ask Shakira anything. She took Nasir from her lap and, looking tearfully at his face, said, "Son, Nasir, open your eyes." Nasir opened his eyes. For a moment, he stared silently at his nanny, and then suddenly threw his arms around her neck and said, "Anna has come, Anna has come." Nasir's pale, withered face lit up, like a dying lamp being refueled. It seemed as though he had grown stronger. A week passed. It was morning, and Nasir was playing in the courtyard. Sabir Hussain came over, picked him up, and affectionately asked, "Shall we send your Anna away?" Nasir pouted and replied, "No, she'll cry." Abbasi said, "Why, son? You didn't let me go to the Kaaba. Who will reward me for missing my Hajj?" Sabir Hussain smiled and said, "You've already earned a much greater reward. This Hajj is called Hajj Akbar, the greater pilgrimage.